There are many things you can do to make the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC much easier for yourself. Let's go over build upgrades, ways to deal more damage and take less, and way more. One thing you should be doing that makes the DLC a lot easier is looking out for these shades carrying a pot on their head, specifically the ones with a sparkling pot. I know that sounds kind of weird, but bear with me. These guys always seem to drop either a Erdtree fragment or a revered spirit ash. Both are really crucial to make you stronger in the DLC, so I will share how to get even more in a moment. Just know that they're a big upgrade for you in case of the Erdtree fragments and your spirit summons in case of the spirit ash. You can find one pot carrier over here in the open world for a Erdtree fragment, but you can also run into them in a dungeon like the one right before the tower leading to the boss in Bellerud Tower who drops a revered spirit ash. So whenever you see one of these, make sure to kill them as soon as possible. Now, one thing I noticed in the DLC is that generally items and areas are better hidden than they were in the base game. But luckily, you're of course not playing alone. And while I don't really bother reading the messages anymore while I'm playing the base game, they are super valuable in this new map. I didn't even know that there are hanging pots that drop an item when you break them, but thanks to the community's messages pointing them out, I was able to pick them up. And they're not just useful for items, as messages can also point you towards hidden areas, NPCs, or alert you of an ambush ahead of time. So completely up to you if you want to use them, but I would have found a lot less and would probably have died a lot more if it weren't for these community messages. And you'll of course find many new items in the DLC, so thankfully there's an easy way to keep track of them. By going to the display section of the settings, you can turn on mark new items, meaning every new item you get will get this little exclamation mark. So use this to easily identify new weapons and armor, talismans, you get the gist. Honestly, a bit strange this new feature isn't on by default. You can also turn on the show recent items tab, as it makes keeping track of new items even easier. When turned on, your inventory opens on a new tab by default that showcases the items you picked up most recently. Kind of unsure why my flasks are also in that menu, but apart from those, any new item you pick up appears at the top of the list in this menu, which makes keeping track of all your new stuff much easier. And we'll be highlighting more amazing items you want to get in future videos, so subscribe to not miss those and leave a like if you enjoyed this one so far. But now that we are in the menu, I would also really recommend that you read the item descriptions of new things you pick up. Not because of the lore, but because there's often some very useful info listed in the description for an item. For example, did you know that the Divine Beast head you get from the first major boss has a hidden buff and debuff? It lists that it heightens strength and dexterity, and you can actually see in your stats that both go up by 4 when equipping this item. But it also reduces the healing effect of your flask of sacred tears, so if you don't read the description, you might accidentally make things harder on yourself. And it's not just this item though. Crafting materials will often include a hint or a direct mention of where you can find more. Cookbooks note which new recipes they unlock. So again, knowledge is power, make sure to read your item descriptions. And while you might be confident with your build going into the expansion, it is a big mistake to ignore all the upgrades the DLC is presenting you with. And I'm not talking about weapons, that's more of a personal preference thing, but more so about armors and talismans. If you're still missing a solid armor set, the DLC has some great gear that is not hard to get to. The Black Jill Knight drops his armor of solitude when defeated, and he's immediately reachable after entering the DLC over on this spot of the map. He doesn't have a huge moveset, but you want to push the offensive against this guy because his most deadly attack is that repeater crossbow barrage, and he only pulls that out if you keep your distance. But yeah, while this armor of solitude is very heavy, it offers some amazing resistances and it looks really cool too. But I think the biggest upgrades will probably come in the form of talismans, as most of the ones you find in the DLC are just a straight up improvement over their base game variants. I've always loved the turtle talisman, as it boosts the speed at which your stamina recovers, which can come in clutch for that one extra attack or dodge needed to beat a boss. So I was very happy when I found the two-headed turtle talisman in the DLC, which gives you the exact same buff but even better. It's really easy to get to, we just need to go on a bit of a ride. From the Morth ruins in the Skadu Altus, head through the cave over here. There's some enemies in there, but you can stay on your horse and just ride past them. You'll end up in a poison swamp, don't worry though, it's just a small one, and if you head to the left and keep going, you will eventually end up at the ancient ruins site of Grace. From there, you want to ride all the way over here, where you will find find a waterfall with a path leading down. Drop down all the way, then look behind the waterfall for a cave with the two-headed turtle talisman. You can also find an improved version of the Crimson Amber Medallion, which boosts your maximum health by a lot, almost 200 to be precise. And again, it's upgrade level +3, while the highest you can find in the base game is +2, so it's a straight up improvement. It's a bit more difficult to get as it does require you to beat a boss, but on the plus side you also get an amazing weapon as a reward. You want to head to the Fulgrift Catacombs, which are located over here and best reached by just following the road from the castle front Grace Point. The dungeon itself can be a bit of a maze, so let me explain how you get to the boss. Take a left at the end of the first hallway, then wait for the trap in the next room to trigger and run across. Follow the path until you reach another dead end, then take a left. Wait for the platform to drop so you can run under it, then go to the other side of the room to find the elevator to the second floor. From here, go into the next room, take a left here. You'll end up in a big room with ceiling traps, so use the nooks on the side of the room to safely get across. We want to reach the back right, where there is one more ceiling trapped room with an elevator at the back end that leads us to the boss. Now the Death Knight is not too complicated, but there are two things you want to watch out for. One is his lightning powered attacks, both the ranged bolts and the melee spin, as they deal a ton of damage. And the second is his grab, which drains your health and replenishes his, so that can be pretty devastating if it connects. After defeating it, the Crimson Amber Medallion +3 is yours, as well as the Death Knight's twin axes, which come with a pretty amazing weapon skill. But even a great weapon can't do all the heavy lifting, because there's an even more important resource in the Land of Shadow. I already mentioned them earlier in the video, but I cannot overstate how important these Erdtree fragments are, especially if you're struggling. These items allow you to unlock and upgrade a permanent stat boost for the Land of Shadow. And since it's a flat increase to multiple stats, upgrading this blessing makes you far more powerful than leveling up in the DLC. I'll show you the location for a few that are easy to get in a second, but first let me show you what they actually do. So we tested our damage and damage resistance against the Black Jail Knight with several levels of blessings. Without any blessings, a base weapon attack deals 160 damage and the boss kills me in 2 hits. But after upgrading the blessing to level 3, we deal 184 damage on a single attack, and we can now survive the 2 hits that killed us earlier. So the baseline is, if you're struggling with a boss or an area in the DLC, you'll want to look for more Erdtree fragments to get stronger. And you can already grab a couple of really easy ones that require no combat at all. 2 are very close to where you start the DLC, in the Church of Consolation over here on the map. Nothing to it, just jump on your horse and right there to grab the item. If you follow the road from the church back in the direction you came from, you'll eventually reach the 3-path cross, where you'll find another Erdtree fragment. They're often found at these Michaelis crosses, and you can grab another one pretty close by that's also next to a cross. Head to the west from the 3-path cross towards Ballarat Tower, where there's another cross next to the main gate with another Erdtree fragment. And another cross and fragment combo can be found over here on the map next to the Pillar Path Site of Grace. You start at the castle front Grace Point, where you can immediately pick up another fragment from the statue close to the Grace. Then you want to follow the road southeast to this point. You'll see the cross soon enough, and from there you can pick up another Erdtree fragment. There's also an NPC next to the cross, by the way, who can sell you the deadly poison perfumer bottles for 6,000 runes, so don't forget to pick those up. But yeah, if you pick all those fragments up, plus the one from the pot guy I mentioned earlier, you'll be able to level your blessing up to 4, which means you'll be able to tank a lot more hits and your overall damage will be increased by 20%, giving you a massive advantage for the rest of the DLC. And by the way, I just mentioned the Perfumer's Bottle, one of the new weapon types. If you want to learn more about those and the other new weapon types, click the video on the screen, and of course leave a like on this one if you enjoyed it, and subscribe for more Shadow of the Erdtree content. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.